pulse of what's happening in Texas. As Chelsea mentioned, I am not a technology person, and I always feel like it's important to start my smart city dialogues by saying, I kind of have a surface level understanding of technology, but if you want to get into the specifics, that I'm not the right person. But I do bring that perspective of urban systems to the work that I push forward for the city of Philadelphia, and I hope you'll see that in kind of the projects that I share. I started in Philadelphia October of 2019. So I had about 5 months in office before we were sent to work from home, which we have now done for officially a year. So happy anniversary on that. But I'm going to be sharing kind of first level setting about what our definition of smart cities is. I always feel like, smart cities is like resiliency and sustainability. It's a bit nebulous, but I like to kind of talk about the evolution of smart cities in our work. And then I'll share some of the projects. A couple have happened before COVID, and then a lot of them have happened post-COVID. And that's really shaped how we're moving forward as a city. So let's see. I'm like, does it work with the mouse clicker? No. So this is our definition that's been laid out in our Smart City PHL roadmap. We launched the roadmap officially in February of 2019 with a executive mayoral order and establishment of an advisory committee. I would say that this is a pretty generic smart city definition, right? Just using integrated information and communication technology to support the triple bottom line of our community. In the past year, what I would say is that the drive of tech and data has definitely taken a back seat to the fact that we want to be more human-centered, and that we really want to use tech and data to enable solutions, but that's not the ultimate goal. We really want to ensure that we are engaging with the community, that we're addressing community needs, and that it's not being driven by tech and data, but it's supported. The other thing I'll note is that one of the things I love about our Smart City PHL roadmap is since we were late to the game of establishing smart cities work, we were able to really learn from a lot of other cities. And the roadmap is more responsive and not prescriptive, which I think is really important. We saw the benefit of when we experienced COVID and the Black Lives Matter uprisings. It really allowed us to pivot to what could have impact rather than having to follow a set roadmap where we had to implement what was in that. One of the important things that we have in the roadmap are these 4 guiding principles. They're essentially our touchstones for the work that we move forward. Philly, for any of those who know us, is very unique. we are a gritty city, and we want to be locally inspired. We are not the Silicon Valley of Pennsylvania. We really have a lot of local resources and assets, and we want to make sure that we're using those to inspire the work. We also want to ensure that anything we move forward is innovative, equitable, and collaborative, and those are really critical components for what we look to move forward. And throughout this presentation, I love to throw in pictures of Philly to show kind of what the city looks like, but also our uniqueness. And this is, speaking of gritty Philadelphians, this is our NFL mascot, Gritty, who has quite the Twitter following. He's very engaging on Twitter. And yeah, he's just kind of one of the things you need, one of the many reasons Philly is awesome. So again, I also like to level set in terms of what people know about Philadelphia. If you were on earlier in this call, we were just chatting. Philadelphia is kind of a hidden gem. We are the 6th largest city in the US, but a lot of people, because of our location between DC and and New York, we're kind of overlooked, which is interesting. We have a population of about 1.6 million. Our population has been growing over the last 14 years. We have a strong economic sector in education, medical, genetics, and biomed, and then leisure and hospitality. So we have some really great components of the city, but then on the other side, we have some challenges that we're working to address. We are one of the top 5 cities currently in homicides. We had a massive increase in violent crimes in the past year. We have the largest open air opioid market in the United States, in our neighborhood of Kensington. 25% of our households live at or below federal poverty level, which equates to about 400,000 households. That aligns with our digital divide of approximately 20 to 25 households not having access to internet or adequate tools in which to access that internet, which again was amplified with COVID and the Black Lives Matter uprisings. And these are just some of the things that I like to think about and keep in the back of my mind as I'm working to move forward projects, because our key thing is that it has to provide an improved quality of life for all of our residents. And if all of our residents can't access these tools, or if they don't support kind of the improvement, then I'm not doing my job. So one of the key things about our sorry, I just realized that there's some font kind of messing up one of the boxes. But one of the key things that our Smart City Roadmap lays out that's foundational is our pitch and pilot program. So within the first month of starting in this job, I focused on setting up our governance structure, which was just kind of key for communication upward and downward within City Hall. But also then this pitch and pilot program, which is essentially a mechanism to both engage in a more sustainable way our research partners, and that's kind of the left column. I'm not really going to talk about that today. I'm going to focus more on the piloting a solution, which is where we really drove the effort initially. And that's the mechanism for us to more transparently and consistently engage with the private sector around tech and data enabled solutions for municipal challenges. So essentially the process is we work with a working group. So we have our pitch and pilot working group, which is comprised of both external stakeholders and internal colleagues. And we work to surface challenges that our colleagues are having via our civic survey that we issue every 2 years, and kind of highlight some top challenges that the city sees, and then also what they're working on internally. We then select one of those and get the relevant department to partner with us and agree to partner with us, and we create a proposal. We go through a review process, get all the appropriate sign-offs, then we issue that proposal and that call for solutions. We gather responses and we review them. It's a very tedious process at times, but it works. We review them, and then we offer a handful of individual applications to come in and pitch, and then we select our pilot, and we work to plan and implement that pilot and evaluate it in a period of 3 to 6 months, depending on what the scope of the project is. And there's just a bit more clarity around that. A key part of the winning provider or vendor, really, the applications have to align with our guiding principles, of course. That's kind of the first critical one. Use an innovative approach to advance our priorities. We do look that it prioritizes disadvantaged residents and communities. We think about things like resident privacy and data security and how that's being addressed. And that there is a potential to scale it up, because that's ultimately our goal, is to ensure success of the pilot so that it can then be scaled up. This is a list of all of our pilots that we have launched. Some have not fully gone through the pitch and pilot process. The ones in bold are the ones that have gone through and kind of been done in partnership with the pitch and pilot working group, but we also use the mechanism to just work internally with colleagues. I have colleagues who approach me about challenges and ask if we can help them find a solution. And so that's another way that we'll launch a pilot. And so these are the 7 that we've done so far since I joined the team. The last 3 are currently either in process or under contract and moving forward rapidly. And I'll kind of go through all of those as I move through the PowerPoint. So the first one, jump right into it. This was in response to the first call for solutions, which was around waste reduction and diversion. So we, in our citizen survey, trash is always a challenge. We are not very advanced in our trash collection. And there's always a lot of trash kind of flying around. We also have issues with illegal littering and dumping in largely in communities of color where there are large vacancies and vacant lots. And so we felt strongly that issuing a call for solutions around helping the city achieve our zero waste target by 2035 was a really good way to launch this program. And we got some amazing responses. We had over 24 applications from around the world. And we went with 2 because we had a little bit of extra funding. The first one we did was this urban mining tool. And it was in partnership with an organization out of the Netherlands, where they were adapting a tool that they had already created to essentially track where we were having construction and demolition waste created and what was the makeup of that construction and demolition waste, and then also identify where there was new construction and opportunities to reuse that recycled C&D waste. And the thought was, what is the connection to equity, right? This is kind of one of those where it's not entirely clear. Well, the thought is that this is foundational to addressing the C&D littering that's happening in the vacant lots in these communities, because if we can create a mechanism that adds value to C&D waste, then it's less likely to just be dumped. Nobody dumps money on a vacant lot, right? So our hope is that by creating this tool that allows us to understand where there's a demand and a supply, that we could then work to scale it up with the stakeholders in this space. This is not something that the city can necessarily drive. We really need to activate our community in the construction and demolition waste space or stream to really kind of take this up. But we're also working internally to develop policies that can help support this. So we're working with our L&I department to see what policies we can put in place, similar to some that Portland has, that any building being deconstructed at a certain age needs to be deconstructed in a way where we can recover the product, because we have a ton. One of the benefits of Philly is we did not have any massive fires like Chicago did. So our housing stock is quite old, and we have a lot of really valuable demolition waste that we want to capture. So that was one. And then the next project that we selected for that same pitch and pilot is with a company called Retriever. And we picked this because they only needed $12,000 for the budget, which worked out. That was the kind of budget we had left over. And the timing of this could not have been more serendipitous. We selected them right as the city went into shutdown. And it's essentially an app that you can either text or access over the phone or online. So it kind of addressed all of the concerns around tech accessibility for us. And you can set up a pickup, and they would come and pick up your e-waste or textiles for free. And what they do is they upcycle or break down in a responsible way so that components of the materials can be reused and kept out of the landfill. And so far to date, we have kept over 100,000 pounds of e-waste and textiles out of the landfill and in the resource stream. So it's been a great partnership, and even more so because we were able to pivot when we started to do work around providing affordable technology to families in need. We asked Retriever if they would consider also doing computer pickups for free that people were willing to donate, and provide them to local refurbishers who created jobs to help learn how to refurbish these computers, and then provided those computers to our digital navigators who were in contact with families in need and received those computers free of cost. To date, that program has actually collected over 600 computers that are in the process of being refurbished and donated to families in need. So that was a really great opportunity to scale that project up. Then this is our notification that we needed to stay home and COVID hit, and that really kind of caused the city to pause, and we had a lot of impacts of that. And so I think it's important to also share how this impacted the city and how we move forward from that. So we had a $750 million shortfall in our operating funds in the last year. The Office of Innovation and Technology, which is where I sit, actually had a budget cut of 12%. There were some staff layoffs and salary cuts everywhere up to 8%. We also had, we were in the news for the Black Lives Matter uprisings that happened in our city. All commercial services are now operational, but had restrictions and still do. Public schools were entirely remote learning until recently, and now we're doing a phased in approach. So not all schools are back in session, but we're starting to roll kindergarten through second graders back into school, while the rest are still working remotely. And as a result of that, our digital divide was really amplified. We were already doing work, but it was made even more evident how dramatic that was. And so this was a really pivotal point for me in terms of how I approached smart cities projects. I spent a lot of time in this kind of pause of where we as a city were working to transition to work from home, to continue to provide critical services that needed to happen, to start to get testing going and whatnot. And so I used that time to ponder a lot, but also talk to my network of friends and colleagues about, what does smart cities really mean in this post-COVID post Black Lives Matter uprising. I really felt that, you know, a lot of the projects we were doing were good. I still do, but for me, it wasn't connecting the dots as effectively as we could. And, you know, at the same time, understandably so, I was kind of getting inundated with vendor emails like, I have the solution to this problem. I have the, you know, check out this technology. And it was just really overwhelming noise that I felt like was preventing me from really having an impact. And so in my mind, I kind of made the decision to only move forward projects that either could address some of these systemic challenges that we were experiencing as a city or have an impact on our budget, because everybody's being asked to do even more with even less money in the colleagues. And then, you know, this image for me is always really powerful. It's just data showing how drastically impacted certain communities, are over others. You know, there were definitely significant rates of COVID in communities of color in our city. And that was just evident of those underlying structural inequities that I wanted to get at. And so, you know, it was really how can smart cities help this? How can we utilize data and technology to move into beyond kind of the current state that we were in and into a more inclusive and equitable city? And this is just one of the many murals that Chelsea was referencing earlier. We have a ton of great art in our city. So one of the projects that we did that is one of my favorite and has been one of the hardest actually to get going is around recognizing the role that public space plays in our quality of life. We partner with a company called State of Place and Penn Praxis, which is a planning consulting arm of the University of Pennsylvania, to do our community engagement. And essentially what we brought State of Place in for after we issued our calls for solutions was to utilize their AI and machine learning to collect microscale urban data. So what they're looking at are things that when you walk in the public space or the built environment, you know when you're walking on a street that you like versus a street you don't like, but maybe you can't verbalize what exactly that is. While State of Place does that, they collect over 150 data points in the built environment, like sidewalk, cracks, trees, broken windows, really all of those things that impact you. And they assess those. And what they do is help us understand where we can prioritize public realm interventions and align that with issues of inequity. So what we were doing is we were able to fund 17 zip codes, which is approximately 15,000 city blocks, that they used cyclomedia images that we already had access to and had funded to collect the data. They then analyze it. We're able to come up with some evidence-based data that they're now running through regression models and are going to come up with like a menu of interventions. And we did this all for 30,000. We want to do the whole city and are actively trying to capture funds for that. But one of the ways we thought that this could be of value to the city is we would work with our Parks and Recreation team to better target their Play Streets program. And this is a picture of a street in North Philly where every summer we offer these Play Street programs. You can register for them and the city provides toys and activities for kids to do in the street. We shut down the street. The requirement is that it's one way, which is not hard to find here in Philadelphia. And it's available for the kids. But if you're looking at this picture like I am, I'm thinking, well, this is a really great program, but that's not the best built environment, right? Where are the trees? Philly gets really hot in the summer. And we have issues with heat island effect in a lot of our communities of color in the north. And so can we also use this data to say, we want to provide you with a play street, but we also want to put street trees in or temporary street trees and see about the impact on the temperature of that community, the air quality, and whatnot. And so we wanted to start to connect departments to having this additional layer of data to really address some of these inequities. We have heat island because a lot of these communities don't have street trees because we just haven't invested in them. And one day I was presenting to the economic development quarterly meeting where a lot of our city leadership presents on their work. And I was asked to present this project, and it just so happened that the Office of Violence Prevention was in that meeting, and they reached out afterwards, which was great because I hadn't even connected to thinking about them. I was really just kind of thinking Department of Public Health, streets, and Parks and Recs might want to, I don't know what's going on there, sorry guys, might find value in the data. And they came back to me and they said, listen, we're trying to make communities safer. We know that quote unquote crime follows grime. Can we work with you to take some of your data and compose some interventions and use it as a way to address some of the highly violent crimes? Because there is data showing that if you improve the quality of the public space, you can reduce homicides and violent crimes. And it's great. This has been one of the most impactful projects for this reason. Is what we're trying to now move forward in partnership with the Office of Violence Prevention is we want to analyze the 2 zip codes that have the highest level of homicides. We then want to take that data and evidence and implement a tactical urbanism effort where it's co-created by the community and the police. So not only are we working to identify what the community wants in their neighborhoods, but they're sitting at a table with police and building a relationship of trust with them and getting to know them. But the police are also understanding why they want these interventions, right? So it's not something where they're just assuming that that intervention is for X, Y, and Z. They're understanding it and having a facilitated dialogue around that. And then we're going to use that to prioritize the built environment and interventions that are most likely to create community safety and improve the quality of life. And hopefully work with our participatory budgeting process to fund those interventions being installed and implemented by community members. And what has me so excited about this is there's been a lot of talk around the defund the police conversation in cities post Black Lives Matter uprisings. And this is really one way, I think, to effectively kind of pivot the negativity around that conversation and just say, let's work together and come up with some innovative solutions to helping address those challenges. So this is one that we're still working on. It's slow moving, but we're getting a lot of internal buy-in, and I'm excited for where it can head. Then I just always like to show this picture. This is our lovely example of how public space can be for everyone and really beneficial if effectively designed. But this is also a picture of our city hall, which is probably one of my favorite city halls in the US, and Love Park, which is a very famous park. You can see the Love statue that people like to take their pictures at. The next challenge that we were addressing was how do we, on a very tight budget, maintain 2,400 plus miles of road? How do we address an issue around pavement conditions when it's manually, doing it manually is time and labor intensive? We also have very little data on repairs and deterioration of our streets as a result of it being a 2-person crew that's manually inspecting our roads. And then how do we balance equity and constituent complaints? So the way pavement budgets work in the city is councilmanic demands require that we provide equal amounts to each council, regardless of if one council or one district has worse roads than the others. And that's largely because we haven't been able to do a broader strategy because, again, going back to the need to use 2 people to assess the pavement. So we issued a call for solutions around how can we more effectively assess our streets and develop a 5-year paving strategy, which will allow us to align with our capital budget efforts and so many other benefits. And so we selected a company called Good Roads, where they provided us with low-cost devices that can magnetically attach to city fleet vehicles. Originally, I was thinking of doing something like this on our street sweepers, because again, if you've been to Philadelphia, we have an amazing challenge around parking. Everybody parks. They never move their car once they park it. And it can get very challenging to encourage people to move their cars. So we were hoping to do a street sweeping program, and that would allow us to not only see the right of way and capture data around the right of way, but also on the streets. But with COVID, we quickly canceled that project and redirected those funds to other more important priorities. So we decided to just install them or place them on city fleet vehicles and have people drive around on targeted streets. We were able to do and assess 1,200 miles in just under 3 months, which is huge. If you think about that, that's half the city in 3 months versus we can never even do 2,400 miles in 1 year. It cut the inspector's time in half. So some metrics that really added value to the streets department. And then being able to do the 5-year paving strategy. But also what we were able to do is work closely with the vendor to ask if they would also map the location of manholes. do some mapping of our street sign assets, and then the pavement condition. And essentially what they do in the pavement condition assessment is they determine when the pavement will fail and what level of repair it will need. So is it going to be complete paving? Is it alligator patching? Kind of all of those things that help feed into that 5-year paving strategy. And the image you see are the roads based on a green, yellow, and kind of orange being the ones that need the most repair and the most immediate repair, and green being in good condition. And what we're also trying to do is the city has put forward a statement that they would look at budgeting efforts through a racial equity lens. So really trying to, again, align our funding with addressing kind of our past around maybe not necessarily being as equitable in our funding as we could. And so there's just another layer of really trying to recognize that if we focus on the streets that we haven't paved for a very long time, it can have a massive effect on things like economic development and quality of life in a lot of the communities that haven't experienced investment. I mean, we have a lot of freeze thaw here. You guys experienced that a little bit, I think, with the recent snowstorms. But in South Philly, they often refer to the potholes as South Philly swimming holes. So that just goes to show you the state of our roads. We won a Harvard Innovation and Tech Award for this, and the city is very interested in scaling up because it showed the value of it to the city. We're looking at maybe not doing the full city each year, but can we do a quarter of the roads and have kind of a 4-year rotation of that? But there's also opportunity to explore around interagency cost sharing, which is really interesting, our kind of economic state. Can our regional trail or our regional transportation authority partner with us? Can our energy company, our gas and water as well, find value in this? And there's ways to align things like notifications around we're tearing up this road to improve, repair the paving. Do you have other work, PICO, PWD, PGW, or SEPTA that needs to happen on this road while they have it teared up to reduce construction time and frequency of construction? And I will go quickly. I'm trying to keep an eye on time, but I wanted to share a couple other projects that we did and then some that we have teed up moving forward. So this is one that was my favorite because it required zero budget, which is always lovely to do. We partnered with Penn State's AI Alliance program, Accenture, and SEPTA. And what we did was we reached out to SEPTA and said, can you use an AI informed model to help with any of your challenges around public transportation? And SEPTA has struggled with ridership and innovation. As much as they try, it's a funding issue. They're doing some amazing work. But they said, what would be really great is to understand the impact of teleworking on the future of how we provide public transportation services to our community. And so the students did an amazing job developing a tool. They presented to leadership. SEPTA found it really exciting with the data that they came out with, and have worked to incorporate that and provided that to the COG too for future transportation planning. But even more so, when the city saw it, they wanted to work with Penn State to determine the impacts of teleworking on wage tax and how that would affect our revenue. We unfortunately didn't get to do that because the students graduated, and so they weren't able to help us. But I think it just goes to show kind of there's always so many opportunities to continue to expand and the value of partnering with a local academic institution. Let's see. So some of our upcoming pilots, I mentioned, I think that we are in the process of launching 3 pilots. Our Global Voices pilot is one that we are partnering with internally with our fire department's community action teams. Those are the teams that go out to large-scale emergencies and work with community members who have been displaced as a result of those emergencies. Historically, the fire department has just said, oh, we don't know that language, but we have somebody on our team who does. We'll call them and have them come out to the site and translate for us. We want to change that. So we are under contract with a company called Globo, who will run a pilot for a year of real-time video and audio translation. We're excited because it has over 220 actually languages and dialects and includes American Sign Language. So that's a great opportunity. And then we were in conversations with the Rebuild team, which is a team here internally that's taking our soda tax funds and using them to update libraries and recreation centers that have just not been updated for a while. And they do that through a large scale community engagement effort. And so They will often speak to communities where it would be much better to gauge interest and feedback from those communities if we could do it in their own native languages. And so this tool will allow for that as well. So we're really excited. And actually, we're looking to deploy this potentially with our Office of Emergency Management and the vaccination efforts as well. So very timely for that. And then we have a Sensing the City pilot. Some of you guys might have heard of the group Zen City. We recently contracted with them to start to track sentiment around some of our larger scale programs. I think trust between the city and the community is at a level lower than we would like. There were some challenges where I don't think the city's messaging landed as it was desired with the community. And I think the community, if I'm doing my own personal sentiment tracking, has felt that they haven't been heard. And so we wanted to use this mechanism to help better adapt our messaging as a city, to make the community feel heard, to ensure that we are addressing their concerns and really anticipating any fears or concerns they might have in advance to manage those issues. So we'll be working with the innovation team, which is one I sit on, that's leading the digital divide efforts, the PHL Connected, which is getting broadband access for our K through 12 families, the tech program, and then also a program called the Digital Navigators, which provides is a resource for individuals who are having trouble navigating these programs. Department of Public Health, I think right now vaccination strategy and kind of sharing that message of accessibility is really important. Streets, we have our street read programs, and then anything that happens in the public space. So trash comes up again, right? Trash was a big challenge. At one point we had a third of our sanitation crews on quarantine, which really drastically slowed down collection and angered quite a few residents. So working to build up that trust, and then Parks and Recs and the Mayor's Comms Office. So we're going to be doing this for a year as well, and are really excited to test that out and see its impact. The next one is our third pitch and pilot, and one I'm actually really, really excited about because it's part of a larger issue around procurement and food insecurity in the city. We just launched it. It's currently out, a call that's out. The amount is actually 40,000, and our partner office is procurement. And essentially what we're doing right now is issuing a call for solutions to develop a platform or an application that can help us understand where there's capacity to produce meals locally and where the demand for city procured meals are. So one of the challenges around what we procure with USDA grants is $25 million worth of food from a company in Brooklyn. And, here we are also talking about how there's a massive impact on local minority-owned restaurants and catering companies. And it just seems kind of crazy that when we talk about best value, our focus is on the lowest offer, when really if we took this 25 million and we're able to keep it within the boundaries of Philadelphia, procure food locally, so the food is better quality when we're giving it to these food insecure individuals. We're supporting restaurants that have been affected by COVID. We could potentially leverage local transportation companies that are utilizing e-vehicles. I think right now we have 40 semis coming into the city daily, and they go through communities that already have air pollution issues and higher rates of asthma. So all in all, this could really have a massive impact on our community in a variety of ways. And I think that's what gets me so excited. But if this comes back, this data comes back and says, yes, we can actually do it. We want to scale up by looking at 3 to 5 parks and recreation sites to pilot that. And then we just won a challenge hosted by US Ignite and Facebook around augmented reality, and what we are creating a hackathon around, and should happen sometime in June, I think, is how can augmented reality make transportation options. So not only kind of our SEPTA services, but bikes and any other kind of micro mobility options more accessible, welcoming and comfortable for individuals with disabilities. So visual, audio, physical, we really want to kind of address that equity component when it comes to accessing our transportation. And so we have a partnership with Comcast, SEPTA, our streets department, and SEPTA is the Regional Transit Authority. And then we're also connecting with our local academia who are focused on the needs of the disabled community. So we have $40,000 that we can award as seed grants to the winners of that challenge. And I'm really excited to see what comes out of that. program. So with that, I will kind of wrap up. I think I just want to say that, I'm constantly thinking, so what does this mean for the city of Philadelphia? Where do I hope we go as a city from here? And I think really for me, what's important is that I hope we continue to use data to connect the dots between what the community needs and the actions that need to be taken to truly achieve a Philadelphia that is equitable, inclusive, collaborative, and locally inspired. I hope we continue to see the value of using data and collecting data that helps us determine where we need to invest in order to have the largest impact, rather than just biotechnology for technology's sake. And I think, for me, that means success because it means I'm doing my job and that I'm helping us move kind of beyond the zeros and the ones of the smart city movement. And that data-driven decision-making is the best way to create a city that's resilient, where our residents are happier and healthier. And I think COVID and the Black Lives Matter and kind of what we've been through in the past year as a city has really shown me that, a lot of people say cities can't innovate and we can't do it fast or quickly. And I think we've shown otherwise. I think there is capacity. I think there's a ton of passion in cities, especially in Philadelphia. And I hope we continue to sustain that. So thank you very much.
Well done. I wish we were all in a room so we could stand up and clap. I mean, you've broken through so many barriers, and thanks, Jessica. What I love about how you structured this presentation is, a lot of times people talk about smart cities and innovation in government, and it's hard to make that tangible into what does that actually mean. And you've demonstrated that you're reaching out to different departments within the city. You're reaching out to startups and innovative solutions. You're reaching out to your university partners. You're reaching out to national partners. And it takes champions like you who are willing to see the potential and to just say, I'm not going to get stuck in long procurement cycles. I'm not going to use the excuse that I don't have a big, huge budget. You've, done some really amazing groundbreaking work with just tiny little budgets of couples of tens of thousands of dollars. So I am hoping that this is a great inspiration to everyone on the phone, both city leaders and private sector, to just let's get going. It's possible. And Emily is proving that with your work. So thanks so much for sharing it. Really, really appreciate you championing this.
Yeah. And I was just going to say one quick thing to emphasize. Somebody asked me what my focus is this year, and it's partnerships. Without a doubt, it's developing partnerships, it's creating innovative partnerships. Nothing can be done on its own. And I think it's, just whoever wants to come together and move things forward, bring them to the table.
Cool. Questions? Jay, do you want to lead the question piece of this?
Well, first I was going to ask Emily, if you stop sharing the screen, we can all get larger photos of everybody so we can see each other's faces. Jessica, do you want to lead Q&A?
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I have questions. This means I can ask my own questions first. Oops. But this was Michael's questions too, which is, you seem very busy. How big is your team and budget for working on these things?
We are very busy, and it's two of us.
Okay.
The reason my partnerships are really important. I have a pitch and pilot fellow who has migrated from just helping with pitch and pilot to kind of being a program coordinator for me. Mm-hmm. And my budget last year, my first kind of full year was 100,000. Mm-hmm. And my budget this year is 60,000 out of kind of city funds, and then rolling over a 75K grant, and we just were awarded a 72K grant.
Okay. Now that I have mine, okay, we had some great questions come in. More logistical questions. Are you working within city limits? Does it cover more than one county? Michael was just interested in how many municipalities you work with.
So we currently work just within the city of Philadelphia. I think there's the next stage is to look regionally. Mm-hmm. The challenge with that is we are bordering Delaware and New Jersey. And then we have kind of the counties to the west of us are in Pennsylvania. So there's just a bit more complexity. But we would probably work closely with our regional COG, which is the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Committee, and look to that next. But I think that requires a little bit more of me being in office, hopefully, to help drive that.
Got it. And I invite anybody I know, usually on Lunch and Learns, people are multitasking and eating, but if people want to ask more questions too, please feel free, sort of popcorn style, to take yourself off mute. This is just in a Zoom meeting, so everybody has their own autonomy to come off mute and on camera to ask questions.
As a warm up for that, it'd be great if we could get a picture of more people actually on cam. We never remember to actually take pictures of these events. Can we get some people?
Jennifer,
Thank you, Michael.
Jennifer said she wasn't
Volunteer
feeling
to come on cam, just so we thank you.
Thanks. Oh, look at them coming. Look
So
at
we
them
can get a picture.
listening.
We promise it will only be used for positive purposes like recruitment because of you handsome people. So,
Like, look where the beautiful, smart, and beautiful people are.
well, we managed to get 4 people to come. Oh, 5, good. If a few more
They're
would
still
come.
coming.
Nothing like peer pressure.
Peer pressure, totally.
John's coming. I'm seeing some friends. Eric, I'm seeing some friends pop their faces.
And we'll
So
do a
Jana,
1, 2, 3, so everybody has a
Yeah,
chance to make their best Zoom face as if they weren't having a screenshot taken at that moment, even though they are.
I will tell. Okay, Jennifer. Thanks, Jen. Sanjana, I'm calling you out because you were on the Austin Forum last night and you're here, and now it's an opportunity to see your face, Sanjana. I see you, Sanjana. I'm just letting you know. Okay. Well, then this will be how it is. Okay, I'm going to do a screenshot. Everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna do 2. I'm gonna do one more really fast because somebody there. That's you know how these things work. Give me one more second. Let me save this one just in case. Do. 1, 2, 3.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
I have a quick question for Emily. And Emily, I didn't prep you with this question ahead of time, so I might put you on the spot a little bit. But I'm curious, when you came on board to the city, were other city departments and those leaders open and receptive to some of the ideas? Because I know they're, groundbreaking and revolutionary and not kind of city government as usual. Can you share a little bit about the process or maybe some of the tactics that you use to bring people on board and kind of embrace the work in a new way?
Yeah, so I think part of the benefit is that within my governance structure, which I didn't dive into, I have an executive leadership team, which is the deputy managing director of the Office of OTIS, which is Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability. I also have my CIO and then our CAO, so the Chief Administrative Officer, all are theoretically supposed to support the work that I do. And thankfully they always have and have been really a good resource to help navigate. But there are a lot of departments, we have the same challenge that everybody else has of siloing. And when I first came on, I felt a bit overwhelmed because we have IT departments in every department. So it was very much a distributed kind of smart cities effort. And, I would learn of smart city projects happening in streets that just, they'd never thought to loop me in. And so I was a bit disheartened by that. But my approach is always just to talk to people. It's been a bit more challenging with COVID. I was really disappointed to jump into lockdown so soon after starting. But, I've told quite a few people I don't accept no as an answer, which I don't know if that's made them my friend or not. But I just believe there's always a way to bring people on board. And so a lot of it is by me listening to what their priorities are and how they talk about their work, and then backing in the smart cities work to kind of make sense to them a bit more. So if I'm talking to streets, getting them on board, which was one of my biggest accomplishments. To be honest, there's a gentleman who's the deputy commissioner and hates OIT and just thinks that we always say no. But he's my biggest cheerleader now because of the pavement process. And there are others that I've just, with sustainability, it's very much less about tech, but how can I help you achieve your greenhouse gas emission reductions or whatnot? So it's adapting my messaging to the audience, I guess. Does that answer your question, Chelsea?
Perfect. I love it. Smart.
Right now, I'm honestly slacking Jay about some like Austin, Philly jealousy, like aspiration, love of like, I want us to do this more. We need to strengthen the partnership because you are funded by the city, like you're part of a city government. We're like Texas Smart Cities is an umbrella of many organizations, and we're part of Austin Smart City Alliance, which is independent. So just
Yeah, how were you? Does the city view you as an office of the city or as an independent entity that it supports?
I'm an office of the city. So I sit within OIT and their innovation management team.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, my budget, which is not much. And I think that's always, I'm very
100%.
transparent about the money that we spend, because you could FOIA it, but I figure why not just get ahead of that, is not very much, but we are considered a part of it. So a lot of to Chelsea's question too, a lot of mine is like, we can offer this service of testing out this new technology that I found. We can project manage it and we will measure it and thereby absorb the risk. Because I think that's the other challenge with smart cities is nobody wants to take on a project that might fail. And I've been kind of given the opportunity, I've been told it's okay if we fail, just as long as we learn from it. And if you'll notice on one of the slides, there was the pitch and pilot was access and appeal of tap water. That was one of our calls for solutions that we never actually selected a vendor because the responses came back. It was a process. We never had a department that was willing to own it. It was something that people felt like we were fitting a square peg into a round hole, but we still issued it. And then the responses we got back were not, if we went with one, it wouldn't have been a responsible use of city money. And so we just decided we weren't going to issue it, but we learned from it because we realized, well, you have to have a department that's willing to sponsor it and partner on it. And also if it feels like you're trying to force it, don't force it. Like very simple, like listen to your gut. And so that's kind of been a way that we've been able to do it and ask other departments who, they're thinking a pilot takes 200,000. I'm like, no, if you give me 50, I can run a pilot for you. And that's been helpful as well.
Emily, have you been successful at increasing your budget because of the successes you've had?
Unfortunately, no, only because of COVID. So we're now facing, and we had 750 million cut off from our last budget. We're in budget process right now and we'll present budget to council in April. And we had another $450 million reduction of budget. So everybody's just getting funding cut back. And so what I'm having to do is develop partnerships where I can get money from them. So for example, we're exploring the launching of a permitting wizard. So if you want to do a renovation, rather than talk to multiple people, we want to have a website where you can say, this is what I want to do. And then there's a report that prints out that says, okay, first step, fill out this form. And there's a link to that form. And next step is, do the X, Y, and Z. Here's the time it should take you to do this. Not integrate it with the system, but just really kind of provide that front line response. And it's with L&I, our license and inspections department. It's with commerce because it makes doing business easier. It's with street departments because they also want street permitting. And so I'm asking all of them to donate a portion to it and then we'll just run it. So it doesn't require any of our budget theoretically, just our time.
And are you postured to take advantage of any of the applicable grants or relief funds that are coming forward?
We are working on that. We're pulling together some documents around that. And so there are some projects like the scaling up of the state of place project. We're looking for funds that would support actually doing the implementation of that, for example.
Great.
So fingers crossed.
And I think this is another cool call to folks who are in the private sector on this call. And, I kind of sit in the middle of smart cities circles. So I always hear, wow, we're just looking for cities who are willing, cities where it's easy to work, cities where, we can take an idea, start a pilot, and then expand it. Which city governments want to collaborate with us? I hear that all the time from the private sector. So if you're private sector folks, this is a really good roadmap, building on Emily's work to showcase and say, this is what willingness from city government looks like.
And I think it's a great link that we need to make. Not all of our city's colleagues could be on this today, but I think we need to make sure all of our city's colleagues see it as well. So I'm glad this is being recorded. So Emily, we're going to be using you as the gold standard for things. So we're going to be sharing this recording link with a lot of people.
Yeah, well, and feel free to share my information. I'm I'm a firm believer, and I've had a lot of people who've been generous with their time in talking to me. So I'm always happy to talk with whomever if they get stuck or want ideas or anything. So please share my information. If that makes sense.
You know, it's also important to give Philly credit for the Philly cheesesteaks, which really are unique, and the soft pretzels, which you know, are unlike any place else. So
Thank you, Philly.
I thought we were going to have a Go Flyers thing. Aren't they playing right now?
Yes.
I have some friends who go down to the bar downstairs to watch the Flyers. It seems like every night.
You're very passionate sports fans, but little known fact, more famous than the cheesesteak is the Philly roasted pork sandwich. So you have to come here. We've got a great food scene, fun sports, wild audience members, but never a dull moment here.
We're not going to bring up when y'all booed Santa Claus at that Dallas Cowboys Philadelphia Eagles game.
Yes.
No, we would
Very
not.
passionate
Bring it
fan.
up classy.
What?
I was getting in the way of the football game. That's just not happening.
All right, well, let's everybody work on our vaccination schedules and road trip to Philly for sure. So,
Yeah.
That sounds great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
This
Emily.
was great. It was really inspiring. Congrats. I mean, you're doing really fantastic work, and especially on like cut budgets and 5 months into taking this role, going into COVID, like,
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, thank you.
This gives us a lot to think about and try to emulate this year as we come out of the pandemic. So this is great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.